Phillies Mailbag with Frank Klose. If you have a Phillies question for Frank, you can always send us a text at 609-403-0973. Frank will answer your Phillies question as he does each and every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. But before we get into some mailbag questions, we always like to hit Frank with a couple of our own. And he joins us down the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And, Frank, let's start off with the Orioles are in town tonight. Any chance we see one Oriole maybe change clubhouses or locker room in this series?
Well, it's not looking too good for that to happen. There was a report just today from Todd Zalecki of MLB.com, and it sounds like the Phillies are kind of sticking to their guns about Manny Machado. They don't really want to give up any long-term assets for a rental, particularly since there are probably other clubs out there willing to spend a little bit more in terms of prospects. And I think the Phillies still like their chances to sign him in the offseason. And if that's the case, they don't necessarily want to give a lot up. Now, Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic reported earlier today also that the Orioles are trying to step it up to perhaps get a deal done sooner than later, with the idea that they can get more back if it's a 3-month rental and not a 2-month rental. So that bears watching. Phillies fans, what you might want to do is get your tickets for Baltimore just in case, when the Phillies are there next week, just in case he does switch clubhouses, because you can bet if Manny Machado is coming back to town there as somebody else, those are going to be hard to get.
Yeah, I know his name has been brought up a lot, but so has another former Philly's name we keep hearing, and that's Cole Hamels. And you just posted a story at 97.3ESPN.com, which our listeners can go read right now. But there is some chatter out there about a reunion. Cole Hamels, we just saw JVR come back to the Philadelphia Flyers. Can we get another reunion in the city?
Wouldn't it be really cool if at the 10-year reunion on August 4th, that Cole Hamels is there in a Phillies uniform instead of not there at all because he's playing for another team? Now, I think the idea is a fun one for Phillies fans. Now, I kind of had backed off personally with the idea of them going after Hamels, but you never know. So John Heyman of FanCred Sports just said that he's heard some chatter that the Phillies are discussing a possible Cole Hamels reunion. And, I think what Hamels can bring the Phillies is a lot greater than Hamels would bring another organization. Hamels is not the pitcher he was. So, Phillies fans shouldn't expect him to kind of come back and down and be the ace that he has always been for the Phillies in the time that he was there. Hamels is giving up the most home runs in baseball right now, and we know Citizens Bank Park, he might be a little susceptible to home runs. But just the way that he can sort of energize the young players on the team, the way he'll be able to energize the whole city of Philadelphia and have them rally around this Phillies team. You can't think that if Hamels comes back to town that he, for some reason, would not help them sell tickets, right? I mean, fans would come out and see Cole Hamels. I mean, how many 9-year-olds are walking around named Cole after that 2008 World Series champion, right? So I think he would provide a tremendous boost to the city and really to this young team, and you might get some intangible effects of that go way beyond somebody just pitching every fifth day.
You mentioned Jay Happ in your story as well. Is he another guy the Phillies would have some interest in?
I don't think they would want to pay for a rental of Happ. If this offseason the Phillies have some money to spend, and maybe let's say they don't pick up a Hamels, and they're thinking, all right, let's try to find a left-hander on the free agent market. They might engage Jay Happ, but one thing that Heyman also did report is that the Yankees seem to be going hard after Happ. And for the Phillies, again, it comes kind of down to, do you want to give up a lot in order to take this run when it might not be your best run, which could be perhaps next year after they get to add some bigger pieces. So it doesn't sound like they're really in on Happ, but next off season, if they need a lefty, he could be a guy that fills that role.
We'll get to the mailbag questions in just a second, but it looks like there is a reunion with the Phillies. Shane Victorino is back with the Phillies for at least a day.
Yeah, so St. Victorino posted last night there's a local news reporter in Honolulu there, and he gave the interview to that reporter, and and said that he was going to retire and he does intend to sign a one-day contract with the Phillies when he comes to town for that 10-year reunion I just mentioned. And, his charity is going to do a special event the day before that fans should keep an eye out for. So he really wants to make Philadelphia his baseball home, even though he did win a World Series with the Boston Red Sox too. It seems like this is when he thinks of his baseball career, he thinks of Philadelphia, and he's going to come end his career as a Philly.
Frank Klose with us, the aforementioned mailbag now open, as I will ask some mailbag questions to you, Frank, including the one from Chris where he talks about the Phillies looking like they're going to sell on Maikel Franco. What can he bring back to the organization?
Well, not that long ago when J.P. Crawford broke his hand and went onto the disabled list, it seems like Franco was going to get his last chance with the Phillies. It looks even more like he's not going to get that chance, even despite J.P. Crawford being out. It looks like the Phillies seem content to give a lot of the at-bats to Jeswell Valentin. And so I think it's pretty clear that Franco is going to be out the door sooner than later. But in terms of a return, I don't think they're going to get a lot back for somebody like Franco. We were talking about the trade rumors. Now, it sounds unlikely that they'll get Machado, but maybe along the likes of a Mike Moustakas. If they make a trade for somebody like that, Franco might need to go back in the deal, not because he's an asset that the other team necessarily is gung-ho to acquire, but maybe because the other team needs somebody to play third base each night until they come up with their new long-term solution. So I would expect Franco to be moved. I don't think he's going to move as sort of a piece that gets them anything, but kind of as that complementary piece in the deal that will help another team fill a hole for right now. And, if Mike Moustakas comes to the Phillies and they need a third baseman in Kansas City, I think they'd be happy to give Franco the chance and see what he can do before making their long-term decision on how to replace Moustakas. But it doesn't really seem like Franco has a lot of value in himself to provide other teams.
Frank Klose with us. The mailbag's open. Phillies play the Orioles tonight. And, Frank, I know that we all saw that play that Vince Velasquez made over the weekend, an unbelievable play with his left hand to get the Phillies out of trouble. However, he had to go on the shelf for a little bit. So Ed wants to know, how do they replace Vince Velasquez in the starting rotation?
Well, at least for now, the Phillies were aided by yesterday's off day, and they have yet another off day on Thursday. So the way things are going to work out because of those off days, Zach Eflin's going to pitch tonight, Aaron Nola is going to pitch tomorrow, and then after the day off, Nick Pivetta gets the ball Friday, even though we pitched a little bit in that Sunday game. Jake Arrieta, he's going to probably start Saturday's game, and then by the time you get to Sunday, then you can get Eflin again on full rest. So that all sounds really good. But then the problem is you have a doubleheader in New York City on Monday afternoon, and then Tuesday is another day where Velasquez is still not eligible to be activated. The earliest he can be activated is Wednesday, July 11th. So there's going to be a need for a few moves here. What I think the Phillies will do is they're going to use the option that they have. All teams have now an option to add a 26th player when you're having a doubleheader. I think it would make sense for the Phillies to bring Ben Lively up for one start. Let him kind of come in and be that 26th man for the day, make that one start, and then probably go right back down to AAA. And then they're going to need to do something creative for the next day, and that might be in the form of a bullpen game. Now, one thing that the Phillies were very fortunate after that extra inning game on Sunday was that they had an extra reliever in Jake Thompson because they used the roster spot from Velasquez to bring on the extra reliever, and that ended up coming really in handy as Thompson gave them a few scoreless innings. What they might have to do for one of those games is just try to see if they can get Jake Thompson to throw a few, probably option him out when Velasquez comes back on the 11th if all goes to plan. And then have somebody behind him like Mark Leiter to try to throw a few innings. It's not going to be a fun situation to throw a bullpen game, especially as we've seen the relievers get overworked now and then. But if they can do that, then they'll be able to send somebody out and then pick Velasquez back up. But you're probably looking at one game started by somebody at AAA, one game with the bullpen. And I know people asked me, Ed was asking me on Twitter too about Cole Irvin or Aniel De Los Santos at AAA. I don't think they can start adding players to the 40-man roster yet, because when you do that, you need to subtract somebody. I think they're going to try to keep things the way they are until there are some trades made, perhaps, at the trade deadline. So I don't think they're going to go that route just yet, because it's a little too complicated to be adding somebody. Then you got to figure out who to cut, and I don't think the Phillies are ready for that just yet.
Quick behind-the-scenes interjection, Frank. Maikel kept wondering why I wasn't saying no relation every time you were saying Jake Thompson. But you were on a roll, buddy, so I didn't want to interrupt you. The mailbag is open with Frank Klose. So I like Adam's math here, Frank. He says, hey, 44 wins at the halfway mark equals 88. What moves are we making, Frank Klose?
Well, I think that the recent play, one thing that I think is kind of clear now, the Phillies just went through that 42-game stretch that was really kind of picked out to be the toughest stretch of the season for the Phillies, and they ended up going 21-21. So I think after that play, they've pretty much shown that they do need to make a move. They should make a move, but again, we keep coming back to the idea that they're not willing to give up a lot of prospects for something that they can buy later. And if you look at this Phillies team, it's really cool that they're making the playoff run. There's a chance they make the playoffs, but I still think the Phillies see that perhaps next year is their big year, and they don't want to go for broke just yet. So I would say that they're going to probably pick up a reliever. Now, for all the relief discussion we had, Ken Rosenthal a week ago wrote an article about and he used the word glut of relievers available on the market. And it seems like this is a scenario where the supply is going to be plenty. And if the Phillies can pick up a nice veteran reliever and not give up too much, I think they'll take advantage of that opportunity. I think they're going to get an infielder for the left side. Again, I keep going back to Moustakas as kind of being the type they might want to get. Not going to cost a whole lot in trade, although they will have to give something up. He's somebody that won't be a long-term burden or at the same time won't overwhelm them in financial cost or prospect cost. And, then we get back to the idea of a starter. I kind of was in the mindset that they were not really looking to add a starter, but then this latest report from John Heyman today about Cole Hamels makes me wonder or scratch my head. They say you can never have too much pitching, and who knows, maybe the Phillies are willing to make a trade like that for the reasons we mentioned. I was kind of thinking in my head that they wouldn't go that route, but, July is a crazy month, and if they keep winning a little bit more the next couple weeks, you never know what you're going to see.
Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Frank with the mailbag for us. And Frank, as always, joins us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. If you'd like to ask questions to Frank, you can send them into our text message board, 609-403-0973, or find him on Twitter at Frank Klose. Frank Klose with a K on Twitter, Mike Gill.
Yeah, man. So we got the Orioles for 2. Then the Phillies are on the road for a good bit. Then they have a little bit of a homestand late. But the schedule lightens up here, Frank. They had that 41-game stretch or 42-game stretch where they were 21-21. And now, man, they got a chance to do some separating here. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I think the key now is that they don't realize or have in their head that they went through that stretch and they did very well and feel like that they can let up. We've seen the Phillies too many times, even earlier this season, lose games to the Mets that they should not have lost, right? We know the New York Mets are not what they were hoping to be this year, and, even down to Matt Harvey being run out of town. So, the Phillies can't let up. They have to bear down. They got to take these games from the Orioles. They got to take some games from the Mets, especially when you're playing doubleheaders and stuff like that. It's hard to win a doubleheader no matter who you're playing. So they really need to keep their foot on the accelerator, because if they play 500 ball against these lesser teams coming up like the Pirates and the Mets and the Orioles, well, then you're going to be thinking a very different thought about this Phillies team.
All right, man. Orioles for 2, and then they go on the road literally till the end of July. So if you want to see a home game tonight and tomorrow, your shots, fireworks, I believe, will be in attendance there as well as the Phillies take on the Orioles at Citizens Bank Park. Frank Klose here on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Thank Frank.
Thanks, guys.